of sunny days and rainy days. Be with us this morning, and may the meditations of all of our hearts and the words of my mouth be acceptable to you. Amen. Amen. Yesterday I lived that tension between love, joy, and sadness. It was a joyful day because my family in Puerto Rico got electricity for the first time in 7 months and 8 days. Thank God, right? And their text messages and phone calls were filled with gladness and love, hope, and gratitude. And I was so astonished by the resiliency that they had displayed through these very difficult 7 months. Particularly, I cared and felt more deeply for my nieces and nephews trying to go to school and college and in this crisis. So I was glad. But then just a couple hours later, I was so sad to learn that one of the giants of our faith had fallen. Dr. James Cone, father of Black liberation theology and a distinguished professor at Union Seminary, passed away at the age of 81. And when giants fall, the earth beneath us shake in unexpected ways, and its tremors are so strong that they unsettle us. And it is then and there that we feel their presence stronger. Their words begin to have even deeper meaning for us. And we see and realize that because they were in this world, we were changed. And never had I heard words like, if the church is to remain faithful to its Lord, it must make a decisive break with the structure of this society by launching a vehement attack on the evils of racism in all forms. It must become prophetic, demanding a radical change in the interlocking structures of this society. Never had I heard those words louder. Never had I heard words like, the scandal is that the gospel means liberation, that this liberation comes to the poor, and that it gives them the strength and the courage to break the conditions of servitude. Never have I heard those words louder than yesterday. The words of a man or a woman who live and change the world in the process are transformational. And perhaps this is why the words of Jesus continue to ever and always bring something different and change us and challenge us to look at the world differently at every turn. And in the text this morning, Jesus is in the middle of his farewell speech, and he talked about this relationship of us with him in the terms of vine and branches. And some have taken this speech to use it to admonish others. But I invite us to look at it a little bit differently this morning. And in order to do that, we first need to understand this relationship of what it means to be vine and what it means to be branches. So let us go to the basics. If you're planting vines, you have to know what you're doing, right? You have to make sure that you soak the vine for 2 hours before you put it in the soil. It has to be planted in full sun. In the first couple of years, the vine should not be allowed to produce fruit for 2 years. It needs to strengthen its root system before it can support the extra weight of fruit. Pruning is important because if we don't prune correctly, if you don't prune in a timely manner, the vines will run rampant and out of control, and they will climb over the structure in ways you cannot control. And when the branches are running wild, all the strength is going to them, so the fruit is not gonna have any strength. Now, there's a moment also that once you know what you're doing, when this I learned on my own, but when the leaves come out, you have to prune them early on. You can use them also to cook, you can use them to cook, but you have to prune them early on so that the fruit will have a chance to grow and have strength. You can't have a vine that has too many leaves. The more you prune, the more grapes you will have, is the principle. And the closer the branches to the vine, the more fruit it will bear. Now I'm going to tell you a story of my own experience with this, okay? In my house in Connecticut, there's an area in my deck that is full sun and no one would ever sit there ever. It was just too hot, it had no cover, and we couldn't use it only at night. So we decided to go to the back and grab like the 4 poles and do a little vine thing and do a little trellis and plant vines, grapevines there. Now, I have to tell you that we did not know what we were doing. And I can say that freely this morning because Sabas is not here, who would be very offended if I said that to you openly. That's like something you say to each other, but not. So, my husband had a dream. And the dream was that he would be sitting someday underneath the trellis, and as he was just sitting there being shaded by the vine, also he could just, he's a tall man, so he could just go like this and grab some grapes and eat as he was sitting there. That dream has never materialized. Why, you ask? Again, because we did not know what we were doing. We did not realize the pruning process. We let the vine give a few grapes within the first 2 years, so that's done. We didn't, Sabas was like, why are you cutting the vine so much? And, I'm reading about this, I'm saying, you're supposed to be cutting it. He's exasperated, right? So we really did not know what we were doing. So now that time has passed. The vine will never give us fruit. It will give us shade, which is what I care about. See, 2 different interests. He wanted fruit, I wanted shade. So for my purposes, the vine is great because it's running wild, it gives us a lot of shade in the summer. But will the dream that my husband had ever happen? No, it's done. Because we allowed the vines to the branches to get way too spread out. And if we really wanted fruits, that was not the place to plant the vine. So we had to, before we went into that very, very ambitious task of getting fruits and sitting under them and all of that, we needed to do a little research. And we just did vague, like nebulous research. We're like, oh yeah, we'll plant and eat some, this and that. But we didn't really take it to heart that we had to prune it, that we had to cut the leaves, that we had to have patience with it. We had none of those things in our to-do list. And yet, we always expected it to give fruit. And it was disappointing to Sabas, not to me, but to Sabas every year, to sit there and look at the leaves with no grapes coming out. So when we consider this in relationship with our journey with God, we can determine that there are so many things in our lives that perhaps need pruning. But more importantly, is the connection to the vine that is paramount to the fruit of the branches. The pruning is extremely important. It has to happen in a timely manner. But the branches that are closest to the vine are the ones that give better fruit. And that connectedness will bring forth vitality. And that is in contrast to a world that tells us that being individual, independent, a solo person is the way to go. This teaching tells us that the more we are connected, that the more we are together, that the more that we experience this walk just joined with one another, the more fruit we will bear. And the messages that we're receiving, not from this scripture, obviously, in the world, is that the more that you're independent and alone and a leader in the front and everybody behind you, the better you will be. So we have these two messages that we need to reconcile and negotiate. Now, there's also this element of abiding. While a lot of theologians, or some theologians, go into this whole without Jesus there isn't, salvation sort of moment in the scripture, I would like to go into that place of abiding. What does it mean that we abide with God? That we abide in the realm of the Spirit? That we abide in connection with one another? That we look at each other and say, I need you just as you need me. And without you, I can't make it. One thing I've learned in my 50 years in this world is that there's nothing I have done that I could have done by myself. There was always someone who gave me some counsel, someone who said, vente por aquí, negrita, come over here, and, there's someone that always said, Damaris, if you do this a little bit differently, you would end up differently. There was always someone who whispered, someone who showed me by example. There was always someone who opened the door. And if we're honest with ourselves and we really look deeply, even when we like to say, I have my brother who I love always says, no one gave us anything. Some people did. They gave us time, they gave us prayer, they gave us hope, they gave us an example, they gave us something. Some people did, right? Give us something. Inspiration, something. So it is good that we sort of look inside of ourselves and say, who in that connectedness, in that moment of connection, just was there with us, helped us to just be. There's a theologian I love, which is Catherine Lewis, and she writes that the statement, I am the vine and you are the branches, is a paraphrase of Christ is risen, he is risen indeed. And so away from the branch, we wither. Away from the branch, we lose strength. And I invite us this morning to consider, what does it mean to stay close? In the world of I need space, okay, I'm just going to say this to you, okay? If I would have said to my mother, I need space, perhaps I would not be breathing. It is possible I will not be in this world. I'm just being very honest, right? Because we're in this place where everybody needs space, and you're 5 and I need space. What? I don't get it. Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. But instead of us always wanting this space, what does it mean for us to stay connected? And how would that change us corporately? A church that abides close to the vine is one that gains strength to speak truth to power. It gains strength to love and let love win. It takes strength to say love, period. It gets strength to be prophetic. And finally, a church that abides close to the vine will understand what this means. if the interpreters are willing to say what the people have to say about their struggle and the reality of Jesus in the fight for freedom, and proceed to develop their tools of critical analysis in the light of their identification with the goals and aspirations of the people. Then and only then are they prepared to ask the right questions and hear the right answers. If the church, as interpreters, is willing to say what the people have to say about their struggle and the reality of Jesus in the fight for freedom, and proceed to develop their roots of critical analysis in light of our identification, of their identification of the people with the goals and aspirations, then and only then is the church prepared to ask the right questions and hear the right answers. James Cone. May he rest in power. And may us, the branches, have a determination to get pruned and stay close to the vine. Amen.